Welcome to homework.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the GATT/WTO round negotiations and why over the years they have taken more time and it has been more difficult to resolve certain issues. So let's start off with what the process is. So the GATT process, GATT is the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. So this process was to negotiate a trade agreement between countries to reduce barriers to trade and create a more free flow of goods and services, right? And the key is the first thing they would do is negotiate with the countries, right, to set up a deal. Then both the countries would sign it to agree upon the trade agreement. And then the final thing they would do is implement, right? Implement this trade agreement. So these three steps they would do separately. So they would first take one country or the group of country, negotiate, sign, implement, and then move on to the next agreement with the next countries. So this whole process in general is a lengthy process. But when you duplicate this with more and more countries, with more and more agreements, the whole process gets it is a very timely procedure, right? So let's look into the round negotiations over the last couple of years. So this picture shows the negotiation rounds of the GATT and WTO that have happened in the last several years. So for the most part, you can see that the time interval between these trades have gone up significantly. So you can see here the first interval took 2 years, next one took 2 years, and then it moves to 5 years, and then 5 years, and then more and more. For the most part, the time interval has been elongated over the years, right? Like specifically the last two negotiation rounds, it has taken almost 15, 16 years to come to an agreement. And this is mainly to do with the amount of countries that are involved within these deals, right? Aside from the first, let's say 4 or 5 negotiation rounds, we have seen a constant and significant rise in the countries involved in these round negotiations, right? It makes sense as to why the negotiation takes so long because it is hard for this many countries to agree upon the same trade agreements, right? We know that the GATT takes each agreement one at a time. So by focusing on a certain group of countries and moving on to the next and moving on to the next, as the countries get more and more, it'll take longer to come to agreements and to resolve certain issues, right? Another key factor that translate to why it is more difficult to resolve is because GATT negotiations have recently set up a separate trade rules for certain industries, right? This includes textile or agriculture for certain countries. And these separate negotiations are mainly for low income countries because it focuses on production of like raw material, right? Like I said, textile or agriculture. So now the WTO has and the GATT have even more to negotiate, right? Let alone just the trade agreement of barriers to trade between the countries involved. Now they have to look at certain sectors within those agreements to come up with trade. So it is understandable as to why it takes so long for these negotiations to resolve, right? So with more and more countries being involved, more sectors being populated, and more issues taking place, the GATT and WTO negotiations have understandably taken longer and more difficult to resolve due to the issues addressed previously. See you in the next one.